Welcome back, Red Spotters, another show here on Red Spotlight Entertainment. I'm your host today, Alexis J. Soto, and I'm joined by the one and only David Francisco, who is celebrating a brand new microphone today. How are you doing, David?
Good. Hope people can hear the difference. I don't know. Maybe. Who knows?
We're all hoping. This is something he did on his own accord, so, yeah. It also goes to show you what we can do with our money when there's nothing else around.
Yep.
So, yeah. This is another installment of our Beyond the Shield series where we recap weekly new episodes of the final season of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the recap for episode 3, Alien Commies from the Future. A perfectly titled episode.
Yeah.
And how we usually start these things is we go off broad, talk about overall what we felt about the episode in some pretty vague terms, and then around 5 minutes after that, then we begin to really lay it on thick with the spoilers, because how we usually like to deal with these episodes is our initial impressions, and then we just kind of like flow or bounce around from character to character or storyline to storyline, and that's how we go from there. So with this episode, I have to say, this is actually the first. So, a little bit of background. The last 2 weeks, I have not been watching it live because I have been unfortunately recording in the middle of those broadcasts. So I've been catching it on Hulu, which I do anyway, either way, because yeah. But this last week was the first time I watched it live since last year's finale. So it's been over a year. And generally speaking, for the entirety of this run of this TV show, I have been one of those people that have watched it live as it was broadcast on ABC. And then, of course, several times after that when it was on Hulu or whatever. So, I'm a very avid fan, clearly. So it was just, the novelty of it with watching it with the commercial breaks and everything and having to wait through that and yada, yada, yada. This, I think, is great. I really loved it. Mm-hmm. This one, I think, will be among my favorites, not just of this season, but maybe of the whole show, because, I think it's perfectly summed up in one critic's review in the AV Club, where they said, yeah, you know what, this just feels like S.H.I.E.L.D. is on a victory lap. It really does, because you can tell how much fun the cast is having with these situations, and there's just something about, some of the characters in particular are done with it. Like, okay, at this point, nothing will surprise me. Some characters like Coulson are very much leaning into the ridiculousness of it. And I think in general, as audience members, we're just left with, maximum levels of entertainment. This was, I think, one of the most hilarious episodes.
Oh, for
I
sure.
really laughed really hard at a lot of different times. And I think that this is, again, another one of those episodes that I'll point to people who have never seen it and say, like, you may not know what the hell's going on, and it's like the last season, but you know what? The tone and the flavor of what this episode offers is what I think S.H.I.E.L.D. does its best. They do some good stuff when it's like, really like serious. Like, I think season 5 worked for the most part really well, especially with the emotional moments. But as in like last year's, some of the season 6 episodes, like the Fear and Loathing on Planet Kitson, that whole episode where Daisy and Gemma were just completely high and they were like going to the bar and everything, or Code Yellow, which was Deke's episode where he kind of breaks the fourth wall a couple of times. Like that kind of like zaniness, kookiness, like just humor that they've done these last 2 years, I think has really worked off in spades. It's episodes like this that I'm glad we got 2 more years of this show. I loved this episode.
Yeah.
I'll take it with you, David. Go ahead.
No, like you said, this is a really fun episode. Like, we see good teamwork within them. And I just kind of like how they just kept coming up with another plan over and over, trying to handle the situation.
Yeah.
And I think that, honestly, this was the funniest episode for Coulson. Like, he must have loved this episode. Oh my god.
Oh god, yes. Because I have to think that every line he said was so good and so funny as well. There is a moment, there's so many moments here, but yeah, in particular where he's interrogating some civilians, trying to weed out who is the undercover chronicom among the group. And he does, I think somebody referred it as the replicant test from Blade Runner, where he's trying to get them really, really emotional to see if they can actually feel something. And he does his job pretty well, considering the reactions that he gets.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. Clark Gregg really ate it up.
I honestly, like, everything was, like, at the top of his game, like not only with like comedy but also like his character. He's always a big nerd when it comes to like S.H.I.E.L.D. stuff. I think this one like really showed it, but also his action. Like I think this is I don't know, this might be the most action he's ever gotten. Yeah,
because Coulson has never really been known for his fighting. I mean, he is a supporting player in the fighting, but now that he's a chronicom, they're unbelievably strong, as they say in this episode. And, you know, since we're on the issue of the Chronicoms, you know, I did say in previous weeks that as far as villains are concerned, for this show, they may be the least interesting because they're just a bunch of like emotionless robots in that regard. But one way to kind of like compensate for, you know, the lack of interest, I don't think we've had, you know, a force of brute strength as they are. Like, I don't think there are any other, like, especially because like all their henchmen are Chronicoms and they're unbelievably powerful. Yeah. And looking at the action sequences in this episode with you know, with Coulson and of course with Yo-Yo and May, holy shit. Like, you think to yourself, yeah, like, these guys aren't playing around, and they're probably the most powerful villains in terms of brute strength, because I mean, that one Chronicom was like, did she almost just flat out beat May and Yo-Yo combined? Like,
oh my god, yes.
That
yeah, that was intense. That was a really
mindful though. Scene. Both Yo-Yo and May are a little bit handicapped at the moment, but
yeah,
you know,
true. Especially May. Oh my god, I think Yo-Yo's like better off than May.
At least her head's clear. I don't know about May. May's she's interesting right now.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, but yeah. Again, this is one of the most fun episodes that I've seen, and we got a big reference. We got a big cross. What was it?
Crossover with Agent Carter.
Yes. Oh man, I still want Agent Carter though in this show.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the big selling points of the episode was the return of Daniel Souza from Marvel's Agent Carter, which, you know, is no secret that both David and I are big fans of the show. Very much saddened by its premature demise at the hands of ABC. But it was, you know, I hadn't thought about Carter in a long, long time, but I really loved the series, you know, a period piece in the days in the universe of Marvel. It really, like, when Carter was around the show, that was at a time where I thought that the limitations of the Marvel Cinematic Universe were limitless. But again, when Carter premiered, that was the year after S.H.I.E.L.D. premiered. And that was at a time when there was still a pretense that the TV shows and the movies existed in this universe. Because people forget this. Carter predates Daredevil. At least I feel it did.
No,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure it did.
So that was a different time. It was the second television show, and unfortunately short-lived with only 2 seasons. And I felt that was really sad because I think if I'm going to look back at the pantheon of particularly the Marvel Entertainment television shows under the guise of Jeff Loeb, I would think Carter easily is at the very top, at least top 3 maybe in my eyes as far as like quality is concerned. Because I'm thinking S.H.I.E.L.D., Daredevil, and then Agent Carter right there, I think. Especially because some of those shows really sucked, like Inhumans. So there's not much competition.
Yeah.
Can you believe that they greenlit what a waste of an Inhumans TV show. That collapsed entirely. We could have gotten a third, like, shortened season of Carter to wrap things up in that regard, but you know how things work.
Yeah.
But it also, seeing Daniel Souza in this episode reminded me how much I really liked that show and liked that character. It was cool seeing him there.
No, yeah, he was awesome. I liked how he was super excited to. Well, we can get to the plot, right? I know.
Yeah, we can go ahead and get into it.
Yeah. So the team like sneaks into Area 51, and
which is a S.H.I.E.L.D. base.
Which is a S.H.I.E.L.D. base.
Well, shouldn't be that surprising.
All the bases are S.H.I.E.L.D.
All of the areas, apparently.
Yeah.
And then we had a call back with Daisy in her days in the Rising Tide when she was like, well, Conspiracy Me was so right.
Yeah.
That was funny.
Mm-hmm. And then to sneak in, Simmons. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I keep getting you confused. Simmons disguises herself as Agent Carter. Dude, oh my god. I didn't see the name on the card. But like I saw like the S.H.I.E.L.D. logo in her picture, and I'm like, oh my god, is she trying to be Agent Carter? And then they said the name. I'm like, oh my god, this is great.
No, dude, I'll tell you about that moment because previously there was a scene on the Zephyr, and then Daisy was saying, well, with Simmons we got to get it. We had to get a little creative, and I thought to myself, no, she didn't. And then we cut to the car, and the music was building up, and it was like, okay, we're doing this. And God, I love it. It's like you remind yourself. Both Coulson and Gemma are big fans of Agent Carter, so
yeah, I think Coulson says like, "Oh, you're loving this, aren't you?"
Yeah,
I think he
Peggy
says a line or something like that. Oh, it was great.
You're enjoying this way too much, Peggy.
Yeah. And I like how when Susan's introduced and he finds out Carter is there, and he's just like super excited to meet her again and everything. And the way he sort of handled the situation when he realized it wasn't her, it was hilarious and just kind of like, oh, this is pretty cool. I miss this guy.
Yeah, no, Souza is great. We're touching on a couple of different things, but let's kind of streamline it. So Souza, this is several years after Agent Carter. So if we're in 1955, I think I've heard people say that we're at least 7 years after the events of Agent Carter season 2, maybe 6-7 years or after that. And clearly, the romance didn't necessarily work out between them. And again, it's we're left. There's a little bit more mystery because, of course, that show left things very much unresolved. And then to make matters more murky, Endgame had this whole thing where, remember, the writers say, yeah, he went back in this timeline, and then the directors are like, well, no, he went in an alternate reality, and then he's with a different Peggy, and it's like, whatever it is, I mean, if you choose to say that he went back in time in the MCU timeline, then Peggy right now is with Steve, if all is to be taken at that face value. Go ahead.
Well, we don't know when.
Right. We don't.
Steve went back in like which part of time. He could have gone 15 years. Who knows? So.
Well, didn't they? Didn't they say? Oh dear. That may be a plot hole for the writers. Then didn't they say 1945? when they at the end of Endgame?
Did they?
Or 1948, 49, whatever it was. Maybe it was 48. Or no, I think it was 1949. Yeah, I think it was the year 1949, which would have made it after Agent Carter took place. Whatever it is you want to believe, and if we're wrong, whatever. But
yeah,
not that it really has to exist in this timeline, because of course, timelines.
Yeah.
So like whatever. But we also know from the Endgame that at least it was my interpretation that at one point Peggy was the director. Because her office did say director Margaret Carter when Steve walked in Endgame. When they were...
I mean, it would make sense. She was one of the founding members.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's 1955 or 1940 something. So... Well,
hold up a minute. This is the 70s. That scene is from the 70s.
Oh, then yeah, maybe she could have been director.
That would have been in the future, because when they go back, when Tony and Steve go back to the base, that's in the 70s. So, which is like at least 20 years ahead of where we are right now, which is in 55. Can I just say, I'm a big UFO guy. I love aliens and alien movies. What a treat it was. You set this in 55, the age of all of this UFO stuff that's beginning to, kind of the height of it in pop culture. It's in Nevada in the desert. It's Area 51. Of course, it's a S.H.I.E.L.D. base. And nothing to me, like the episode told me exactly what it was going to be. When the Zephyr fucking like zapped out of the sky, and of course it would look like a fucking alien saucer to 1950s people, and they were just screaming, and then of course it crash lands. And Coulson's right, yeah, we probably should be flying when we jump the timeline, and there are more details with that, but with the alien theme, I really am loving the title cards for this season as well. So we zoom up, we have a little bit of an alien zing in there with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. theme with the red font letters. Oh my God. You can just tell.
They're having fun. They're all having fun in this last season. Like, why not?
Yeah, I think to me, it just exudes a level of confidence. Like, you know what you're doing, and it's working off really, really well. But back with Sousa in this regard, he spots the disguise, and I love how they show him. There's a little bit of progression, because I do believe that. Remind me, in season 2, did he have the cane, or was he still using those crutches?
I think he was still using the crutches.
Because Sousa in the show Agent Carter was mostly using crutches to get around, and then in this episode, he has a cane. So if that's the case, then he's clearly has improved his condition since those seasons.
Yeah. Actually, I didn't remember the crutches until now. Like, as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh my God, he did have crutches. Yeah,
I didn't recall it until somebody mentioned it on some other podcast. That's why I was like, well, you're right about that. I just forgot entirely, because the cane felt so natural, especially how he used it.
Yeah, I mean, you remember the limp leg and all that. You just, whatever he was using to walk, it's kind of forgetful. But yeah, no, that's a cool detail.
And then also, I love how they use him as a very competent agent. I mean, not that it would be hard, but like he very like smoothly walks up to fake Carter and like busts her, and then gets Coulson. And it was as simple as that. And then much more than that. And I feel we're going to play into this in this week's episode. This big reveal that Sousa noticed that there were, as he says, sleepers sleeper cells, sleeper agents within S.H.I.E.L.D. and that it needs to be found out right now, that he had filed a report, I believe, to Washington, D.C., which that suggests that he was one of the first, if not the first, to be aware of Hydra's presence within S.H.I.E.L.D., which I think for a character moment, that's great for him because, like he solved it right then and there. But of course, that would mean that, you know, since and I think Daisy even said it as well, like, and that's a little bit of like symmetry here where she's talking with Deke, like at this moment Hydra is infiltrating itself in every layer of the government. And it's interesting because when I saw Captain America the Winter Soldier, I was only under the impression that maybe I shouldn't have been, but that mainly Hydra was within S.H.I.E.L.D. But no, as we've seen with this show, they've infiltrated themselves at every layer. I mean, with the movies Winter Soldier, we have the senator that gave Tony Stark a bad time from Iron Man 2. We've also seen General Hale from this show, who was deep in the military, in the Air Force, I think she was in. So, yeah, Hydra infiltrated themselves not just within S.H.I.E.L.D., but at every agency. And it's hilarious to me that at the end of Winter Soldier, they blame it only on S.H.I.E.L.D. And of course, in the show, in season 1, they announced that all S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel are fugitives of the law, where every agency kind of had this issue. But of course, American hypocrisy when you have that situation right there. But anyway, Hydra would have found out about that. And so I think the implication there is they killed him.
Or, I mean, I don't know if it's going to come out later on. I don't know if it's any confirmed, but it could be that he figures it out. But, you know, someone from the team tells him,
right,
you can't do anything. They're literally everywhere. You can't trust anyone. You're just going to have to keep it secret. But they also have to like tell him like they'll be stopped, you know?
Yeah, which would be pretty hard to tell somebody to do because of what is going to happen. It only reaffirms Daisy's position about what happened, right? With what she wanted to do. And yeah, I think there's a little bit of a realization that she was a little out of line. And I love how in the opening moments of this episode, Director Mac puts his fucking foot down. And it's like, hey, what the fuck?
Yeah.
You don't have authority to do that. I'm the one giving the orders. Are we clear on the mission? And then Deke, like, what the hell? You don't take orders from anybody but me. Remember that. So I love from like almost like the very beginning of the episode, but like we have to like Mac needs to take control back a little bit here because it was getting a little bit ridiculous, and that's a good moment.
Not like I said, he's the big brother of the whole team, but like he knows when to put authority when it needs to be, and it's great. Yeah, and then you know, off the heels of last week, we have the situation with Daisy and Deke, and I love that we get to have a moment between those two to really talk about what happened. And we see that Deke is very much miffed, if not a little annoyed at Daisy for having put Deke in that situation. And I don't blame him. I mean, and I think what's remarkable about that is kind of a little acknowledgement from Daisy, even though she hadn't put it all together. But I think it's also a big moment for Deke to kind of like reaffirm who he is when he says to her, I'm not the same guy you met in the lighthouse. And it just reminds you, again, the Russos always say this when it comes to their character arcs with the Marvel movies, the distance traveled for the characters. Literally in his case, he went from a futuristic dystopian timeline back into the present. Now he's in 1955. So and even that plays into the plot here with Helios being the MacGuffin we have to find here in this episode from his timeline, how it was used to basically destroy ships. Which the Chronocoms want to acquire, not just so they can take out some leading S.H.I.E.L.D. players, but also the ability. I feel like if they destroyed Helios and all of that, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s aircraft wouldn't even have existed, and so that would have kind of like TKO'd the S.H.I.E.L.D. team in that process. But back with Deke,
it reminds you how much he has grown and changed, even from back when we met him in season 5, the beginning of season 5. And, you know, not that I ever considered him a stone cold-blooded killer. He was just a survivor.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would get people inadvertently killed to survive, you know, to save his own skin. But I don't think that would ever killed or captured, depending on the situation. I never saw him get anybody killed personally, but he did betray Daisy in, you know, their initial interactions in the lighthouse. But it also just reminds you how much he has. It's really a journey of self-discovery. In his timeline, he never was given the opportunity to have any kind of identity.
Or
he's just a survivor,
or
right?
fun or anything.
And so, with him being in this world and with, you know, actual human beings like our S.H.I.E.L.D. heroes, he's kind of discovered who he really is. And as he says to Daisy, he's not comfortable with taking a life like that. Which is, I think it's just a nice moment to just reaffirm Deke's humanity. And how really at the end of it, I mean, it's not in any way to dismiss him or belittle him, but he is kind of like the baby of the group, where it's like there is a little bit of innocence to him, where it's like, that's not something I've ever, you know, wanted to be put in a position into. But that was a big thing for Daisy way back in season 2, when May was training her, and then Daisy had to shoot to kill Donnie Gill, back in the episode where Gemma was undercover at Hydra. And that had an effect on Daisy. So it's like, it just reminds you of like where Deke and his journey is in comparison to everybody else's. And also that it may not lead in the same trajectory as everyone else's journey. So it was, I think, a wonderful exchange for the characters to have. And then it also gave Daisy more of a chance to clarify her reasoning. And even though it's not, I'm sure there's more to it, but she's right. And that is like right now at this moment, Hydra's taking over the world. And that's a situation where every individual, if you're given in a position, it's the same situation of like kill baby Hitler or kill baby Thanos. It's what are you going to do? So yeah, time travel stuff.
Yeah, no, I really like that moment too. Deke, great character. But also, like, I think you did mention it a bit. It just shows how much change the other characters have gone through. Because, like, for sure, that's something Daisy probably wouldn't have thought of in the beginning of the show. But now she's willing to do anything for the mission, for her team. It was great.
Yeah. By the way, the costume and the hair work this year is fantastic.
No, yeah.
The hair is great. I mean, Gemma, Daisy, Yo-Yo, even May, she looked great in this episode too. I don't know what the hell. I mean, of course, the time periods and everything, but you know, with it, and of course, the costumes look very, very well done. Hopping back a little bit with Gemma and with Coulson here. It's always fun when S.H.I.E.L.D. does some undercover missions. It's been some time since I can recall that happening. I don't think they've gone undercover since like maybe season 3, if that. But what's hilarious is this is the first time Coulson and Gemma have gone undercover together since way back. And I've noticed this was on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Twitter, way back in season 1 with the Tracks episode, that episode with the train. And Gemma and Coulson were playing a father-daughter combination. Do you remember that episode?
It's like it's coming to my mind, but I can't remember much.
This is one of those episodes where it was fragmented. We got to see. It's one of those where the team began disappearing one by one. It ultimately ended with Daisy being shot by Ian Quinn, which led to them transporting her to the facility where they told her that she was dying, and then they found out Tahiti and the drug, and then it saved her. This is way back, by the way. So like, if you can recall this, I get it.
No, I mean, I do remember a bit them playing the whole like father-daughter role for the mission, like, but everything else, oof, man, a lot's happened since then. So
too much has happened, I think you could say.
Oh yeah,
since that situation occurred. So
no, but they were a fun pair. I think they've always kind of worked well together because I mean, like you said, you had that episode, but then also had like. They sort of spent a lot of time together when she was trying to infiltrate Hydra.
Yeah.
So I think I think there's always going to be good teamwork within those two, at least for covert stuff. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Gemma, she's like one of the smartest smartest person in the group. So I like how they sort of try to figure out how to find a chronicom, like separate them, and it led to just a bunch of hilarious jokes where they try to like just get any type of reaction from someone and see if they
and the writing, of course, is what makes it work, but you also have to count in the slight little like nuances that the actors add in themselves that make it more hilarious. I think to myself where the first one where Gemma asks how many fingers am I holding up, and then like he hesitates, and it was like, okay, it was 2, bye, and she kind of just like blows him away, and like those two commit. They really do. And of course, like the whole moist situation.
I was gonna mention that. I love it because the way like he says it though to his face is just like moist. And then the other guy that you're interrogating, he's just like flinching the entire time, like, oh god, no.
And it's rooted in reality. I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but 20% of the public can't stand that word.
Yeah,
they have a negative reaction to that word, which is so funny to me.
Yeah.
It's just the way that it sounds, like moist. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Right.
People listening to this and just like, stop it.
Okay. But there were also a lot of it shows. God damn, what a big nerd Coulson is. Like he really had some deep cuts in there. With like certain questions, like one of the scientists, he asks, don't you think John Wayne is overrated? And if you're not aware of this, because I recently rewatched a really good film called Trumbo with Bryan Cranston, which was in the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and that was the Hollywood 10 controversy where these writers and actors were blackballed from Hollywood because they were registered communists. By the way, communists back then meant democratic socialists, so not at all Soviet Russia, but John Wayne was one of those actors that was like America and like fuck the pinkos and the communists and whatever that is. You're not an American if you're a communist and whatever it was. So he was pretty much a propaganda attack dog. And in my view, a piece of shit. So I love when he was like saying that to clearly. You know, in the 50s, mostly everybody was radicalized by American propaganda. And that's a theme in this episode as well, because it is the 50s. And it was like, John Wayne loves America. And so I love John Wayne. So, yeah, whatever about that whole situation. And then, like, he asks this other guy about, like, choose between these two, like, 50s actors and yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, his fanboy comes out every now and then. I love when his reaction, like, arrest what? And then Daniel Souza is right, like Daniel Souza, big fan, as he's about to get arrested. But of course, I think the moment, I didn't mean to skip past this, but the one that I was just like laughing so hard was when he made that old woman cry. That was beautiful.
Oh my god, that's great.
With the turtle on his back.
So bad.
You monster. No, it was great. No, it's fantastic.
Great work from him, honestly.
God. Also, no, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Oh, you go
ahead. I know. I didn't know where I was going to go with it. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, talk about May and oh man, Yo-Yo.
Yo-Yo.
I can't remember her actual name. Yeah. just like what they're going through. I like that bit in the beginning with Yo-Yo and Mac, where she's just talking about what happened. And I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's kind of just comforting her, like she'll figure it out, basically, or I'm sure that she'll get through it. And it was just kind of nice seeing those two again together, having like a little moment. But then like leading up to where they had to, where the whole going undercover just goes out the window and they just straight up just start attacking people or something.
Well, yeah, that's the thing though, is I think, well, this touches on a big part of the episode that I wanted to leave for the end. In particular with Yo-Yo and with May. How they get in there in the first place is just hilarious because they're women, women of color, and like they just let them walk onto the base. And then like May was like, well, in the 50s, female pilots were actually more common than men because they needed us to fly their targets for target practice.
Oh no, yeah,
because sexism and everything.
Yeah, no, I mean everything that they kept out of the sexism, the racism,
dude.
It was like they did not stop. They did not hold back, basically.
Which I appreciate, and also is interesting because this episode was written by the Zuckerman sisters. They've written episodes of this show every year. This is the last episode they've written for the series, by the way.
Oh.
And yeah, and hilariously enough, there's some other podcasts I listen to, Fantastic Geek, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. recap. We're talking about, well, are we sure they aren't time travelers? Because, and I made a list here of stuff, I'll just say, that's in this episode, and it's not like it's unnaturally inserted. All of it kind of fits with where they're at, and it speaks to the timeline. But this episode must have been written at least a year and a half ago. We know this episode was filmed over a year ago. That's how long this season has like been done. And yet it airs in the middle of, civil unrest with the whole Black Lives Matter movement exploding over the murder of George Floyd. And of course the protests all across the country. And, racial unrest and all that. So you could say that, wow, what a time for an episode like this to drop. But, it really just speaks to that, well, it really, the protests shouldn't have been a surprise because, this episode is evidence enough to tell you that things kind of have been the same for a while. Let me run down the list of things that were in this episode. So the character of Sharp, the defense secretary here, who's a big S.H.I.E.L.D. player who they drug, by the way, who's played by a wonderful character actor. Last I saw him on was Bridge of Spies, the Steven Spielberg film, and he played a similar character like that, but very, very well done, and great performance of the actor, although what a piece of shit he is. So here are the things that he, a lot of racist comments. He calls Mac a boy. He calls Elena mamacita caliente. He called May an Oriental. And he wouldn't give them the time of day. And I think one of the most hilarious moments of this episode, and one that it even took me a while to figure out, what are they getting at? When they all look at Deke and they're like, well, I think you got to go. And Deke's like, I have the least experience. Why are you asking me to go? And it even took me like a minute to figure out, well, why are they asking him? And then the silence lingered, and I'm like, oh, no. And then he points to his face, and it says it's because of...
No, I like that line before he says that, where he's like, come on, man, don't make us say it. Oh, my God.
But I like to think that, our generation in particular doesn't notice race as much. Therefore, it's not an issue. Like, it doesn't matter for us. Like, what you look like.
Yeah.
We like people, and we're kind and everything. But it also draws a spotlight on the diversity of this cast. Because you have, May, or, Ming-Na Wen is Chinese American. Natalia Cordova, who plays Yo-Yo, is Hispanic, and of course we have Henry Simmons, who plays Alfonso McKenzie. That's his full name. I forget Alfonso McKenzie. We just call him Mac. Is black, African American. And I love how Deke just kind of like childishly storms off in like stupid white privilege, which is hilariously like just turned on its head because, white privilege is real, by the way. It's a thing that exists. And I think this episode shows you why it exists, because when he shows up in front of Sharp, and then immediately he's like, well, I'm glad I'm finally talking to the man in charge. And then Deke is like, just almost speechless. Just like his breath was taken away when he was like, and he says, wow, you guys just jump straight to that, don't you?
Oh my God.
And then like, I love how it stays true to this era and people like Sharp, but I love how it just pokes fun at how ridiculously stupid racists are. Yeah. Like, really? That's how you're going to determine like who's in charge or who, is smarter than the others. And it was like, I love it. I love it. Wasn't even shade. It was just one of the best takedowns of racism I've ever seen. It was beautiful. Yeah.
No, I mean, like you said, it was all like naturally woven in, the like racism and the sexism. Like in the beginning of the episode, Coulson, he's all like, oh man, this is the age of like technological advancements and all that. Like, this is the height of America. And Daisy, Daisy, she's like, really? Are you sure? When they point to the bathroom and it's like black people, white people, it's like, ooh, there it is. And then I did like that bit of when you said that May and Yo-Yo, they just walk into the base naturally, like without any problems. Like I feel like some people would have been like, how'd you guys just walk in? And not because of like their race or gender, but because it's a base. How could you do that? And that bit of explanation is all you need. Yeah, it's also just a really it's a messed up fun fact.
Yeah.
But it was awesome.
Well, so many of these, I mean, it could be as simple as, hey, they're women. They got the uniforms. And at that time, women are not necessarily seen or heard, right? Because like in the beginning, Faye Carter was dismissed as a secretary. So, it's overt. And I don't think it's... To me, I feel that that's kind of one of the special ingredients about this show is that practically everybody involved, from the writers, the producers, the showrunners, and the actors, are very... I feel it's a negative connotation to say social justice warrior because that's used as an insult by the right-wingers. But they're just... They have a very progressive attitude. Like, pretty overt progressive attitude. I think... We saw it was in season 4. There was a lot of hilarious, subtle takedowns of Trump that was like hidden in there. Like there was this one thing that Peter mentioned a few years back when he was watching one of the Agents of Hydra episodes, and they were in the framework. And he said he cracked up when one of I think it was Sunil Bakshi. He was a talking head for the Hydra regime in that world. He ran the news show, and he was talking to one of his assistants. If you want, later on we can go shopping for furniture, which was literally taken. That's a line that Donald Trump himself said from that infamous Access Hollywood tape of him grabbing women by the genitals. That he was talking about. We'll go shopping for furniture. That's one of the tactics that he uses to bait women in. From that was lifted from that tape and into the episode. So I didn't even notice that the first time I saw that. It was like, whoa.
That's insane.
So and even here there was a wonderful moment where Yo-Yo says to Sharp when he's captured and everything, and Sharp says something like, screw you communists, bad news for you would be like questioning America's unparalleled greatness and blah, 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 blah. And then Yo-Yo, like, oh, so subtly says to him, that arrogance is getting people killed around the world. which I mean is kind of
oh
yeah,
it's relevant, very relevant,
very relevant. You know, American arrogance and all of that, and just to to touch more on just a little bit on just the visual stuff that goes on in this episode. That's very reminiscent of what's going on. We got masks in this episode. We got, and this might be a little bit in poor taste now because of what happened, but we have May and Yo-Yo throw tear gas at people. And literally May says, and that was a great character moment for her, and we'll get to her and Yo-Yo in a bit, but she says, "I can't breathe." Yeah. Which, I mean, what are the chances? Oh my God. It's almost kind of eerie, right? Like how perfect it kind of fits with, like, it's almost as if this was written last week. That's how like relevant it feels. Yeah.
No, I mean, they in terms of like everything about like the whole racism and sexism, they really know how to like utilize it well like at the right moment, because they could have done that in the last 2 episodes with like anything with Mac, because like he only gets like, I think there's only like one line where they mention like the racism,
right
with Mac walking around, he's like, guess people aren't used to seeing a black man in a suit, and so yeah, they really utilized it well in this episode.
There was some more subtleties in those episodes, though. There was a moment when they break into the speakeasy where Koenig is in, and some of the people who have guns aimed at them assume that Mac is Coulson's shadow. Oh, they literally say that, and then like when like, because Mac is working as a bartender at the Franklin Delano Roosevelt party or whatever it is, and like one bartender yells at him, and then he realizes he's a big guy, so he can't really call him boy or something, so he backs off. So there's some more subtleties in there somewhere. Yeah. So yeah, and I think Sharp is such a dick and a racist ass that we appreciate that Mac could have explained the situation when he discovers, the futuristic environment of Zephyr. But when Mac just punches him, stone cold, I just can't help but feel, a great sense of satisfaction. That was, I mean, it was hilarious. Don't get me wrong as well, but I think it was like the audience just like, shut the fuck up already, you asshole. You don't want.
And it wasn't even like Mac punched him to like get revenge on him or anything like that. Like, no, he's just like, we don't have time to explain this, so just knock him out. Yeah.
I mean, of course.
I mean, either way, like it was still like, it felt great to see,
Of course. Yeah, it felt great. Absolutely. But with, so not Mac, Yo-Yo and May. So we see a continuing situation with these character arcs. So I don't know. What direction should let's go with May, and then we'll get back to Yo-Yo.
I think May was the biggest thing.
So, a couple of theories I think have been kind of quashed. I think several theories have been quashed in this episode about certain characters. So, I don't think we're in a situation at all. And I think this kind of I didn't think it was, but I think it was still on the table. But I think this episode kind of firmly went away from that, and I think this kind of goes closer to what you were suggesting last week about May's situation. And that is, clearly, this isn't a possessed May. Clearly, it's not a May that's been swapped out or a Chronicon May or whatever it was. No, it's May, and there are some deep psychological issues that she's dealing with. And there's a big moment for her that this is the last season of a 7-year series, and this is the first time, and she even says it in her life, that she's experienced a full-blown anxiety attack. I've had those. That's exactly what that shit looks like. That's no joke. Like that, like her just is panicking. She's crying. She's just out of breath. That's a full-blown anxiety attack. And that's not something that May, of all people, has ever experienced. And it comes off the heels of everybody and her acknowledging how uncharacteristically unemotional she's being.
Mm-hmm.
How casual she's being, right? With all of the missions and everything. And I feel like what that does is suggest what you were saying last week, in that, yeah, it's May, and she is at a point when she's done, and she may have been putting up a wall to kind of like prevent herself from feeling it, but that wall kind of came crashing down the second she went back into like kill mode. I don't know how you interpreted that moment.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. It was just, she was trying to hold down her emotions as much as she can. But then the moment where something big happens, it just all was just flooding out of her. It was pretty sad to see, just because she's just not like that. But also everything that's happened to her, even before, like stuff that happened to her before, like the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's all coming, and I like that bit of her and Yo-Yo, where they kind of like want to help each other, but they don't want to help themselves.
Yeah,
and so it's kind of clashing, and I kind of hope they get through it together, maybe.
Yeah,
because I feel like May's thing is more psychological, and Yo-Yo's is more physical.
On that note, Natalia Cordova, who plays Yo-Yo on the show, did an interview with Collider, and she said that a favorite episode of hers comes up a few weeks from now with her and May together. Oh. So we may be seeing more of those two as we go further along to see what it is exactly that's the issue. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I think it'll be great for those two to help each other, because they're both dealing with like different things, and I'm sure May has she's gone through some big fights. Mm-hmm. We've seen that in that flashback why she like divorced her husband and
right
didn't want to have family. Like, she was madly beat up, and she's able to just go through the next fight.
Yeah, and it also just, at this instant, I'm recalling the fact that for the last 3 years, May and Yo-Yo have kind of like grown a lot closer with each other. Because in season 5, oh my God, May kind of treated Yo-Yo like trash toward the last episodes of season 5. When she practically told her to fuck off if you don't want to save Coulson at one point. And then at the very last episode, she fucking took the, what's it called? The serum that would have like either killed Graviton or saved Coulson or yeah, whatever. I think it was the odium from the Confederacy. She took that thing and just smashed it. And then and Yo-Yo was destroyed and everything. And that was like one of May's moments where it was like, damn, but hilarious because of how she just fucking did it and everything. But then consider the fact that, when Yo-Yo killed Ruby, Hale's daughter, she and May now had something in common. And that is, they were put in situations where they thought that they had to kill kids, basically. And so they may have bonded over that. And then also, we saw like, in season there was like a whole year where Daisy and Gemma were gone, and so Yo-Yo and May grew closer with one another. And we saw for most of season 6, like, yeah, it was May and Yo-Yo who were basically the main, I guess you could say, generals for Mac. And we saw a lot of scenes with those two together. So yeah, I think it makes sense that these two have only grown closer. And good for them too, because wow, season 5 was really bad for those. I'm just thinking back to those days, and man, like everybody wanted to kill each other practically. That's how bad things got. But yeah, I'm happy that their storylines have been intertwined in this as well, and curious to see where this goes. Considering that May has really, for the most part, aside from Yo-Yo, not really interacted with anybody. And I think she may be doing that too on purpose. Yeah. She's just tired, I think, of feeling anything. I think that's kind of the direction that we're going. And then with Yo-Yo, see, that's interesting. So couple of things before I get to Yo-Yo. So we may have had some other theories that were squashed. So we talked last week that what if Gemma was an LMD or she was a Chronicon? That's how long time had passed. It doesn't seem to fly anymore, considering that all the Chronicons, including Coulson Chronicon, were turned off by the EMP. So it seems as if that theory has been put to bed. Now with Yo-Yo, there's a different theory where if it is going to entangle itself with May, I'm not sure if it'll pan out, but there are some people who suspect that part of the reason why Yo-Yo, or maybe the reason Yo-Yo is having a difficult time use her powers, is because she's with child.
I don't know.
I know, right? Like, I mean, if that is the storyline, it would be nice to end off the series with Mac and Yo-Yo starting a family.
Yeah.
And we don't know. That could be something that we've never seen a pregnant human before, so I don't know how the fuck that would work. It could like be a big imposition on her. Although I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence. Well, we haven't been given much detail. I mean, they keep mentioning the strike. But I don't think that's going to play into it at all. I think it's something else entirely. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, it's just my first thought was when. I mean, yeah, it could have been.
Well, I actually have an answer for that. Not that I keep.
Okay.
I thought I keep details on when Mac and Yo-Yo get intimate, but they did say, or rather recently, it was toward the end of season 6, that episode where Izal is jumping from body to body in the base. And when they have May in holding because they think that she had killed Sarge, May is recounting what recently, she saw. And then she says there's a direct line. She says to Yo-Yo, you and Mac were obviously about to have sex. So it could have, that kind of happened like for them, like maybe a week ago.
Yeah.
So
that
could be evidence to suggest that's where it's going.
Okay.
Could be.
No, then you know what? I kind of hope that's what it is. And then maybe they can have fun with that concept. Like maybe she can't speed through stuff, but the baby somehow affects something else. I mean,
right.
Who knows? So, oh man, that's actually really interesting.
It is, and I love how Mac says to her in the beginning of the episode, "Look, like, so what? You don't have your powers. You're still a great agent."
Yeah.
So she's always been a capable fighter.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I really. The thing about S.H.I.E.L.D. that really surprises me is, apart from the original characters, which is Fitzsimmons, Daisy, May, and Coulson, how they've been able to expand the team year after year with new characters. And it's always a little bit of a juggling act with new characters, right? Like, can you care about them as much as the old ones? And what this show consistently does, at least for me, is, yeah, you can. Because like Mac, when he came in season 2, of course, Bobby, and Hunter, and then Yo-Yo, and then Robbie Reyes, Radcliffe, Ada. Of course, they're not necessarily friends, but well, they were at first, but then of course they turned. And then Deke and Flint and Enoch, and it just goes to show you, I think anyway, the ability of these writers, these showrunners, to just write great characters that are, and they so seamlessly assimilate to the group. I don't know if you ever heard this story, but Jeff Ward, who plays Deke, originally was cast, or I think not cast. He auditioned. Yeah,
I told you this story.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, when this story was told at D23.
Oh, okay.
He was originally gonna play. He was originally
Virgil.
going to die. Yeah, he was gonna be Virgil.
Yeah.
He was supposed to die in the first episode, and when he read like that part where he died, everyone kind of went, "Oh," like they were really sad about it. And when he left the room after the script reading, they just went up to him. They were like, "Do you want to play this character? Like he's in it for like the entire season." And so that's how he got the role of Deke.
Yeah, and then again, also Jeff Ward gave a great interview this week with Collider about his experience on the show, and he talked a lot about the sense of what's the word here? The sense of family among the cast, and how much it felt like that, and that for a little over 3 years, he got to be a part of this family, and he was so close with them. And then he's had obviously other projects, but it made him very appreciative of having been on S.H.I.E.L.D. because it felt almost like high school for him. You know, the good part of high school where you have like, you know, your friends and everything. But, and that he's so lucky to have, and then they all say this, I think, in interviews, both Natalia and other actors that I've interviewed, so I've read about how lucky they were to be part of something like this, which is rare in Hollywood, it seems like. Because, I mean, Hollywood, long storied history, we know of situations where a cast hated each other. But you don't get that sense at all.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I loved it for that reason. I love the little tag at the end of the episode. We got to preserve the timeline. And that bit of like, you will not speak of this to anyone, or we will return and we will probe you. And then the fucking music playing, and it's like, shit. See, that's what I mean when they're just leaning into this like sense of fun, because it just works for a genre show like this, you know. I feel maybe a lot of like, I think what S.H.I.E.L.D. does best from other genre shows is that it knows the silliness of what it is, and it leans into it. It leans, I don't know if cheesy is the right word for it, but it's not afraid to make fun of itself or to make fun of the situation. It helps to make it, I think, just, I don't know, more relatable.
No, you see it in the beginning of the episodes with the title cards.
Yeah.
Like you got, last episode you got like it was like black and white, kind of like grainy looking title card, and then this one you get the like alien invasion type of title card.
Yeah.
And I love those kind of shows where they sort of make fun of themselves. The other one that I see that does that is DC's Legends of Tomorrow. Recently they changed like their title card. Before it was just like this metal title card and like a ship flying by it. But then now recently it's like newspaper clippings, and their theme is now like rock and roll. And like as soon as I saw that, I went, oh my gosh, they did it perfectly. They know it.
Yeah, and you know what? Like all credit to that universe. Like Legends of Tomorrow, it almost seems like to be everyone's low key favorite of the DC verse, because it's always like, from what I hear, not that I watch the show, but I always hear really good things from them. Like even if it's like a whatever episode, it's still fun. So I think
it really is like the most fun shows. Like The Flash, they try to get like as serious as possible with like him struggling with trying to be like the best hero and all that with his marriage. But with this one, it's just, you know, you get those problems of the teamwork, but in the end they know they're a family, and so they just kind of like just talk it out, brush it off, and then they go back to the fun stuff. Like there's literally an episode where I think it was like Attila the Hun was brought back to life from hell, and he tries to assassinate someone by using scooters to get through traffic. So you literally see Attila the Hun in a scooter. Like,
wow,
they don't care, and they know they're trying to have fun. It's amazing.
Yeah. You mentioned it with the title cards. Yeah, and it's not, of course, unique because they've done this for years now, where they've changed the title cards for like not just like entire seasons, but for individual episodes. And to me, that always just set S.H.I.E.L.D. a little bit apart from everybody else. And it reminded me of those old, I don't want to say old school because I'm not really old. I mean, let's just say those early 2000 era Saturday morning cartoons. Let's say Kids WB, what have you. Fox Kids, whatever it is. And for every like season, they would update the opening like credits with like, oh, the stuff that's you're going to be seeing this season, or more in tune with the tone of it and what's different about it. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff about the show that I simply adore. If that wasn't obvious enough.
Yeah.
So I think we've reached the point where we can have a little bit of speculation about what is going to happen next week. What I can confirm, because it's been, not only was it in the teaser, but it's been, I think, confirmed by, I think it was Marissa Tancharowan, or maybe it was a ABC publicity post on social media. But if you noticed, so at the last shot of the episode was a zoom in on Coulson, and there was some flickering going on in his eye because, as we mentioned, he had turned off, and maybe it could signal a rebooting. But there was a moment where there was a flickering. It looked a little bit like yellow, bluish, or whatever, and then it just turned to black and white. Well, this being the 50s, it turns out that episode 4 is going to be an all noir episode, as in black and white. And I mean, and I think, and I've seen some stills from that, and I just think to myself, that's perfect. Yes, do it. Do it. And I think it may be from Coulson's perspective, from Coulson's eyes, is I think what they're going to be leaning on to. And it's going to feature heavily, I think, Daniel Souza as well. So, oh my God. Yes. Do it. Like this is the perfect example of what we're talking about, what they're doing with this last year. It's like they're going for it. Let's have a noir episode. Let's do it. God, I shudder to think if we're going to have a musical episode by the time the show's over, because like they're really going with the genres. I don't think that's going to happen.
I hope not.
I would rather not, but I mean, maybe some elements of it in there somewhere. Not that I want it to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it will be a musical, but I think if they make it to the 70s or 80s.
They are. Oh, we know they are.
Yeah, then they can have like a little... They don't sing, but you hear a lot of like funky music going on, and like maybe they gotta dance or something, and then they try to they add in maybe one person singing. Who knows?
Right.
So, oh my God! I hope that'd be crazy. I would love it.
Yeah, it's exciting because like I think what makes it so different from other years, I mean, the overarching arcs and story plot lines that happen throughout the season, I think, and especially how S.H.I.E.L.D. has done it. They've always produced installments that I like. I mean, week after week. But in this season, it just feels so much like more exciting because of how different they're looking from one another and what they're going to do with it. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think this is so far a pretty great season. Like I'm loving the direction this is going. Yeah. And before we go, I forgot to mention some other details that we kind of glossed over in the beginning, and that is so they added a little bit more ground rules about how this time machine works. So they can only basically follow the Chronicoms. Once they jump, they can only follow the same path they took, which is why that teen couple was out there, because that guy had seen the Chronicom ship a few days prior, I think is what the implication was there. That being the same spot that Zephyr 1, zapped out of. And And then we get introduced to Sybil, who is seemingly the leader of the Chronicoms. It's a scene where it's that big white room that Fitz and Simmons were trapped in last season. And so she seems to be an oracle of sorts, and she says that we have to be delicate with time. And so she seems to be the one that's pulling the strings of the targets and what they're going for exactly. And one subtle thing, there's a little bit of a Terminator touch with the Chronicoms, where when the Chronicoms when they show up, the music that that the composer uses for them is very reminiscent of the Terminator score. Again, done to a purpose, right? So, some a couple more details there about where this is going. Yeah, man, I'm gonna look back at this episode as being, oh god, one of my favorites. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, same. Like I said, like I think this was like top of their game for pretty much everyone.
Yeah,
since we saw a different side of May, Coulson. I mean, he was being Coulson, but like again to the top, funniest he's ever been. Most action,
and look at how great they are. And we still don't have Enoch or Fitz back.
Oh my god! Honestly, I think Fitz is gonna be like the downer, just because like from everything he's been through.
Maybe,
I mean, who knows?
Yeah. Although I mean, last year he was in a monkey suit. Yeah. But I mean, I think it says how far the show has come where, like, we have two major players with Fitz and Enoch gone, and we didn't really need him in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah. I still want him back.
Of course, we'll get back to him at some point.
Yeah.
It's just, we of course understand that Ian DeCasticker was off filming, I think, for the first half of this season, so... I don't think we'll see him until 5 or 6.
Yeah, maybe.
Which, I mean, how they've dealt with his absence, I think, is really well considering the circumstances.
I mean, they did that in
5.
5, yeah. And, like, they really kept it a mystery as to like where he's gonna go or where is he gonna end up and all that. And they fucking killed it when he showed up. It was crazy. So I can't wait to see something like that again.
Yeah, me too, man. And that was a great episode, one of the best of that season. So that's how great, Yeah, it's, just a toast to these people, because they really find great ways of wrapping things up, making things connect in a way that they don't seem forced and everything. But yeah, also I should say before we go, I had some wonderful interactions on Twitter this weekend with the director of the visual effects of this series, Mark Kolpak. Some people were complimenting him for his work in general, and I made a comment about what they're able to do. Maybe see if I can pull it up right here on my phone. But he retweeted my thing on his account. And I'm like, God. That's how, like, whoa, you liked it that much, huh? Yeah, that was like a big moment. I really love interacting with them on Twitter. I also interacted with the Zuckerman sisters, and they both liked my tweet talking about how wonderfully written this episode was, how much I considered it a classic S.H.I.E.L.D. moment. This That's being their last episode and everything. But yeah, I'm trying to pull up my tweet right now. I probably should have had this prepared.
Well, I'll just say one last thing that I forgot to say was when in that scene where they're interrogating the defense secretary person. And I love that bit where they say, where May says like, "Oh, he called me Oriental." And Jojo goes, "Yeah, I had to hold her back." Just like, I love how out of everyone, she's the one that was like already like wanting to kill him.
Yeah, he yeah, that guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
No, that's what I said. What was the original thing that he said? Oh yeah. Mark Kolpak had originally tweeted that to somebody else. That is so very kind of you to say. My entire VFX team worked so hard to deliver the highest quality of creativity that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. deserved. And then I responded with him. And then this is the tweet that he also retweeted is that it's no secret the budget these last 3 seasons isn't what it was previously. And I'm speaking to the fact that for the last 3 renewals, the budget was sized down by ABC. It was first sized down from 4 to 5, and then of course it was sized down even more because season 6 and 7 have less episodes than the other seasons. But it's a testament to all of the VFX crew that the quality of effects never once let the story down. I'm left gobsmacked every year by what you're able to pull off. And then he retweeted with no denying that things change, but the art must always succeed. Love that very much. That's... And in all seriousness, just thankful to them. Because, I mean, I don't know. I think I'll say it 1,000 times. The show works on every level. From the VFX to the costume to the makeup to the hair to the writing. Like, everyone, I think, this year is just firing on all cylinders. And he also did tease that some big, big visual effects moments are heading our way for the finale, which they did confirm August 12th. Will be the official series finale when it'll air, and they're going to air episodes 12 and 13 back to back. So,
oh my god,
yep, yeah. Oof. I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready at all for the show to be nervous. Over. Yeah.
Dang. No, I mean, I think we talked about it. Like some finales have been pretty disappointing. Lately, yeah, but I don't know. I'm trying to be hopeful.
I'm trying to be hopeful as well. If finales have been nervous, and in recent memory they have been disappointing, but what I keep going back to is I've never really been disappointed with Jed or Whedon. I mean, Jed or Whedon. Sorry about that. With Jed or Mo, they are. Yeah, I've never once been let down, and I have full faith they're going to deliver something that will be satisfying. And again, to be fair with like something like Game of Thrones, the signs I think were there pretty much in advance. We just didn't want to see it. In all seriousness, season 7, which I thought was a great season of Game of Thrones, had some signs about how they were treating the end of this series. Which at best you can say royally rushed in the situation that happened there.
Oh, yeah.
So one more tweet to bring up. This has nothing to do with me, but I found this hilarious. Joss Whedon did this tweet. Someone had done a challenge about name a thing that lasted longer than the Confederacy. The Confederate States of America, which were the southern states that seceded during the Civil War, which was like, 4 or 5 years? That's all it lasted. And Joss Whedon retweeted that with a picture of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, love sticking that knife in. I love it.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
that's great.
I don't know. I love it. Well, thank you, David. This is so much fun to talk about this episode. I can't wait for the noir episode and see how that goes. This is turning out to be a wonderful, wonderful season, and I hope all of you listening think that as well. We have other programs coming your way where our weekly Avatar recaps. Our next episode will feature episodes 11 through 20 of Season 2. Book 2 Earth of Avatar The Last Airbender. We have more episodes coming up with To the Table is beginning Tron Month with me and Peter. And of course, our impressions of films that had big impacts on us And we have a review coming up on Spike Lee's new film on Netflix, Da 5 Bloods. Spoiler alert, it's pretty great. Pretty great. So with that, we will see you next time. Stay under the spotlight, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.